Ladies and gentlemen, at Goafest 2018, it's time for us to welcome our incredible guest and hear about his magnificent journey. It is none other than cricketer par excellence, Mr. Jonty Rhodes. We almost thought Anand's not here, and for any anchor, it is super hard to decide a fairer side of the debate when you have Anand and Jonty on the same dais. And that's what I mentioned to them in the morning. So thank you very much. It's a pleasure to share stage with you. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jonty Rhodes and Anand Narasimhan for you. Never did I ever meet a tough moderator who is so interested in selfies, so you already know the impact of Mr. Rhodes, ladies and gentlemen. So now can the conversations begin? Are you excited? Come on, give me a louder yes.
Well, for a second, I had Jaideep there sweating because I lost my way. So I figured out a way and pushed my way through this way. So that's how it is. Anyways, how are you all doing? Good to be with you. And I'm one of you guys. I said that last year and I say this again. I'm one of you guys because I was a media planner before I became a television journalist, a media journalist, or a quasi-television journalist because that's what they think we are, quasi guys. People who come and say a lot of things, but are you really journalists? A lot of people ask us. But every day, we take that half an hour to prove, that 1 hour to prove our mettle and our ability, and I hope over the next 45, 50 minutes, the man in question, I can do justice in this chair because he is somebody we all love, don't we? Don't we love Jonty Rhodes? Let's start. How many of you remember 26th of February 1992, World Cup? Who was that against? Do you know the opponent? Pakistan. There was somebody, Mr. Potato, who was trying to make his way back. See, when a potato races against a panther, what happens? You get the man who we all remember. That one freeze frame, Jonty Rhodes, is etched in our memory. And you have lived up to so many more. So big round of applause for the man he's been. And this is why he's so right for this leadership summit. Because leaders lead by example. He doesn't need to be captain of a cricket team. He just needs to be the man on backward point. When you know you have Jonty Rhodes there, you know you got 15, 20 runs saved. Alan Donald knows that he's going to have good scores in terms of their bowling figures at the end of the day, even if he has got a bad day with the ball. That's what Jonty Rhodes could do.
No, please don't throw. You will ruin my reputation. No.
It just surfaced as on cue, did it?
No.
I didn't intend to throw the ball because I know he'll make a dive for it. But I want to give him the ball. And Jonty, just tell us, what was Bancroft actually trying to do?
Yes.
And how do you legitimately do it? Without using sandpaper.
Well, it's a good thing he put the sandpaper, not the ball, down his pants. Because imagine if he got that wrong. But firstly, what I want to say, Anand, is that I was sitting backstage while you were getting lost and listened to the last two speakers. And what was the first thing this journalist said? What did he speak about? Which country? Pakistan. So Faye, thank you. I'm listening to you. I heard that, and I will try and educate the rest of the media in India on your behalf. So that wasn't the only thing. The sports minister spoke about school teachers and maths and science and the importance of that. Do you know what kind of teacher my father was? Can you guess? PT. Yeah, so yes, both speakers I have already related to. So if you get here early, on time, you can get a feeling. I mean, I do understand that IST is Indian stretchable time, but I don't know, please. That's why he doesn't do a live show. Yeah, right. That's why you don't do a live show.
No,
it's time.
that's the only reason I do a live show, because the moment they say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you're there. You're on the ball. You're running into the studio. You're sitting there, and they're saying 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And Jonty Rhodes is wondering, where's the guy who's going to be supposed to be too?
I was
there you go.
thinking.
Voila, I was in time. There you go.
Thank you. Good
All
to
right.
be
So-
here. Thank you
So
very much.
let's talk about this. Don't sidestep this. I'm not going to let you do that. You got to pick up the ball and tell us what is it that they were doing and why is it cheating? And would you
Okay.
have allowed this had you been the captain of the team?
Okay, I think, well, there's many questions in one, and I do talk in roundabout circles, so please stop me when I get too far or start talking too much nonsense. But every cricket team tries to get, in test cricket, and even 50 overs, 20 overs, you're probably not going to get the opportunity to get the ball to reverse swing. Because on conditions these days, we do know that people love to be entertained by the ball racing to the boundary or sailing over the boundary ropes. So in 20 over cricket and 50 over cricket, the conditions generally favor the batsman. And that's not a standard rule, but generally you see that. There's not always an even contest. So what the teams speak about is that if the ball is not, there's no orthodox swing, and generally the 50 over wickets, there's not much turn in the wicket either. So how can you get the ball, because it's quite difficult to stand and hit the ball that's traveling at 145 kilometers, and there is slight deviation in the air. So whether it's regular swing or reverse swing, if there's no regular swing, what the guys try and do is scuff up the one side. I mean, if you've watched the Australian sandpaper gate tapes, as we all did with glee for a while, and until Steve Smith started crying, I think most of us then felt sorry for him, which was quite strange, because the first 4 days we loved it. But you know, I think what teams try and do is scuff up the one side, because that makes the drag, you know, the ball flies through the air slightly slower on the one side and actually gets dragged towards that edge. So conventional swing, it swings away from the shiny side, and then with the reverse swing, it's obviously reverse. So you do try and scuff the ball up. South Africans are by no ways angels. I mean, we've been caught before scuffing the ball. Faf du Plessis, the current captain, he was pretending to shine the, well, he was shining the ball, but his pants had a zipper for a pocket, which was fairly convenient because he was just rubbing the ball very hard. Vernon Philander himself, he's used his thumb to just clean the ball, I think he said, take a bit of dirt or wickets off it, or a bit of the pitch off it. So from that point of view, every team does try and scuff the ball. Generally what happens is you throw the ball in on the bounce, one bounce to the keeper, which the umpires do monitor. Now, I'm a fielding coach. In T20 cricket, I was a did I say I am a fielding coach? I was a fielding coach.
Till December 2017.
Yeah, until last year. But what I generally ask is the players, please bounce the ball in when you throw the ball from the boundary, because it's a flatter, harder, you know, more direct and more accurate throw, as opposed to something that's looping in the air and then doesn't bounce to the keeper. But the umpires are watching, and if they deem that the fielder is close enough, generally where the circle starts, to reach without bouncing, they'll ask the player to please keep it up. So the umpires are monitoring it, but they didn't seem to be watching that sandpaper that snuck into his hand. You know, so from that point of view, teams do try and scuff the ball up, but within the rules of the game. So that's the one thing. You know, it does happen, and every team is trying to achieve reverse swing. The second thing, very surprised that the Australians would firstly stoop to using sandpaper, which is obviously very blatant and quite difficult. I mean, you've seen the old war movies or criminal movies where you try and destroy the evidence and you eat the paper. I mean, there's no ways you're going to... He was very brave to put the sandpaper in his underpants. I don't know. He should... I'm not too sure why the Australians criticized him. The Prime Minister should have given him a medal for bravery. Because I saw it was like third grade sandpaper. It's pretty rough stuff. So there'll probably be a movie coming up pretty soon starring Bancroft, I think his name is. The last thing, obviously, we're talking about leadership, so that falls under the ambit of Steve Smith. So how come he allowed that? And it's been interesting because, you know, he's got a huge following in India. He's a very popular cricketer in Australia. I mean, being compared in the same breath to Sir Donald Bradman, and that yes. Not many players, batsmen especially, even get close to that sort of comparison. You know, with that strange technique that he has, you always think, well, he's going to get out, and he just never seems to get out against whichever team he's playing against. So as a leader, this has certainly been his biggest test to date. Not been his only test. I mean, you'll remember talking about the DRS, the referrals where
It's not the first brain fade moment, isn't it?
Australia were touring India, and he was standing there getting advice from the dressing room. So, you know, for him to talk about brain fades then, sandpaper gate now, which has all happened under his watch as a captain and as a leader, that's the only disturbing thing. Because the first time you can not understand it possibly, but not really forgive it. And when it happens on a continual basis, possibly there's an erosion of that leadership that he has.
True. Before I move on and come across and talk about leadership moments and crisis moments, you will have to get back to that cricket ball in some time, but you can have that sip of water. Share with us what you shared with me in the morning. That's an interesting anecdote. It's not something which I've heard from Jonty Rhodes before, of how you were witness and also perhaps you didn't become a victim, I don't know, to tampering of the ball from one of the best masters of the art of swing bowling. Not.
He's going back to Pakistan. I mean, what? Okay, if I have to. I played one season of county cricket. I retired from international cricket in 2003, and then I went and played for Gloucestershire, which is the hometown is based in Bristol. And we weren't a very strong 4-day team. You played 50 over, limited overs competition, and you played the 4-day. And county cricket is a lot of cricket. It just goes on and on and on and on. And there was a coach, John Bracewell, New Zealander, who was coaching Gloucester. And all his information in the build-up to the season to me had been, Jonty, if you can get the players to love the game as much as it looks like you're loving it, he's not worried about results, or especially in the 4-day cricket. In the 4-day cricket, we actually got promoted to the first division, because what happens in county cricket, because they're playing so much, is that if they're behind on day 2 and day 3, they just give up, because they want to go home and have an extra day off. So what we were doing, we weren't winning every game, but we were drawing, we weren't losing. And one of the matches, so we weren't a great side in 4-day cricket, but one of the matches we had been forced to follow on against Northants. And Shane Warne had played there, but he wasn't that season. That season they had Wasim Akram as one of the overseas professionals. And a chap, Alan Mulally, who was, I think, Australian by birth, but also possibly playing as a local with the Colpack deal in England. And we were forced to follow on 150-odd runs behind, and myself and the opening batsman put on a 200-run partnership, because generally by day 2 or 3 in England, it's pretty fair batting conditions. And with no lateral movement and no turn on the wicket, it just got better and better to bat. So what happened, Wasim had bowled us out in the first innings, and then he had come in with a very stiff back and unable to bowl in the second innings, which made our job, obviously, as a batting team, a whole lot easier. And what happened was that after lunch, he came onto the field to field. I mean, Wasim Akram to field. Yeah, that's the first warning sign for me. He's back. He's got running shoes on. That's the second warning sign. The third warning sign, he was standing at mid-off. So every time the ball came back to the bowler, it went to Waz first. So Ian Gould, who's a current ICC umpire, was officiating in the game, and I just said, Gouldy, just watch carefully, please. Oh, don't worry, Jonty, we are officiating this game. You just concentrate on the cricket. So within 10 minutes from the ball being dead straight, wonderful batting conditions, suddenly there was reverse swing, and I'm not saying anything else, because I'm not here to talk about Pakistan. But yes, it does happen. It really does happen, and no sandpaper is required.
No sandpaper is required. They use the thumb. But then the umpires now start asking you to chew off your nails if you have some, don't they?
Well, I think it's obviously, as a fielding coach and as a cricket coach, one thing you try and speak to the young players about is that's a really bad habit to have. I mean, Ricky Ponting would never have got the ball to reverse swing. Remember Ricky Ponting with Mumbai Indians? I mean, he nearly chewed his thumb off. So, yeah, you do need to grow a nail somewhere to give that ball a little bit of love and attention.
Right. So, Wasim Akram, master of swing, and also, you know, the master at what? Did you ever witness the Pakistanis switching the balls when it was hit to the boundary line? And during those days, they were masters at. Did you ever notice that? They would say that what Pakistan used to do in their home series was when the ball was hit to the boundary, they would concede a few boundaries, and then the ball would cross the boundary rope, and somebody would throw the ball back, right? They would switch the ball. So this was before the days it was caught. But let's talk about Jonty Rhodes here. You made your debut in one-day cricket with the World Cup, and you retired with the World Cup. So it is a World Cup to World Cup journey, 92 World Cup to the 2003 World Cup. What happened on that moment, on that match against Kenya? You were again diving for the ball, right?
Yeah, I finished my career not in very glorious fashion. You kind of plan your retirement. Obviously, a home World Cup in South Africa, part of the plan was to finally stop being accused of being a choking team and get to the final and win a damn World Cup. And it wasn't to be. It wasn't even the fact that we got knocked out at the end of the first round robin stage. The second match against Kenya, Nicky Boyer was bowling, so left arm spin. I wanted to be in the action as much as possible. I mean, I really loved fielding. I might have given it away with this really big smile on my face, very dirty clothing. I mean, I was very grateful we wore green as a team because my laundry bill was through the roof during the test series. And at the start of my career, you were actually given a laundry and a phone and a food allowance. And everybody else they wore the same clothes for 3 days. But for me, I had to spend all my money, ended up bathing with my socks and my underwear. Again, fortunately, no sandpaper in there, just to try and save on the allowance. But in the last game, for me, of my international career, was not even diving too far. A ball just going to my left. The batsman stepped out and he hit a full-blooded half volley at me at sort of short extra cover. And instead of catching it, I actually dropped it and caught the ball on the end of my finger, or not the end of my finger, sort of full on the side of my hand. And it broke my finger. And the interesting thing was, I'd broken it once before, and all the injuries. I mean, I've got a finger that does go around corners.
Yeah.
So it's
you
interesting.
See that finger, little finger of his?
Yeah.
How crooked it is? How many times you must have broken it?
It's a little bit crooked, but only broke 2 bones in my entire career. So never as a batsman. I probably never batted as long as I should have batted, but twice in the field. So at the end of what we did, because it was only the second game of the tournament, and in a World Cup, you're allowed 15 players in your squad, and you can only replace a player with another player.
Yes.
So you have to leave the squad. So initially, the hospital was right next door. It was at Potchefstroom. So I got rushed to the hospital. They put in a plate and just said, in 3 weeks' time, it'll start healing. And by the 4th week, which was the second round of the tournament, because World Cups are generally over 2 months, that I should be able to play. It'll be uncomfortable, but I'll be able to play. So Cricket South Africa then said, okay, we'll keep you in the squad. But unfortunately, they didn't have enough batting cover. And then after the 3rd or 4th match, we'd lost against New Zealand, and suddenly we weren't looking like qualifying for the next round. And they panicked slightly and said, okay, we need to bring in Graham Smith, a young player who had made his debut in the December-January against Australia, but because they had already selected the World Cup squad, was not included. So I made way for Graham Smith. The start of his career was...
Think about that. He makes way for Graham Smith, albeit with an injury, and that's how his exit happens. And South Africa get their future captain in Graham Smith, who you believe wasn't such a good captain.
Hey, no, not at the start of his... And we're talking about leadership. I say he wasn't a good captain, because sometimes results don't tell you the full picture. And the interesting thing was, I only had played under 3 captains in my entire career. Kepler Wessels was one, who had played for Australia and had obviously left South Africa during the years of apartheid. We had economic and sporting sanctions. So went and played. A couple of guys went and played for England. We had Alan Lamb and Robin Smith playing for England. We then had Kevin Peterson, obviously, further down the line. But Kepler Wessels was our only export to Australia. And he came back to South Africa on a rebel tour in the late 80s and stayed on because he was then banned from playing international cricket. But when South Africa was readmitted, he then captained the World Cup in 1992 for South Africa. And he just was the only international... So whether Peter Kersen was the senior player in our team at 32, Hansie Cronje and myself were 22. And none of us, whether we were 22 or 32, had any international cricket experience whatsoever. I mean, South Africa had come to India. You had very kindly hosted us. When I think Pakistan were about to shoot a nuclear warhead at you guys, so you cancelled that tour, another tour. Yeah. And we quite happily put our hands up and said, take us, we'll play. And South Africa were readmitted. So Kepler realized that in Australia, he needed younger players in the squad, fast legs, big outfields. But his leadership style was, it's my way or the highway. Because he thought, being the only person with international experience, no one else had an opinion. Which was interesting, because, we had fathers, we had 2 teachers, we had an apple farmer, we had a lawyer, 4 university students, and maybe 2 full-time cricketers who were playing 6 months in the UK and 6 months in South Africa. So it was an interesting mix, and I understood Kepler's dilemma, but if you've heard him commentate and you've heard him speak, he's pretty aggressive and punchy, so he doesn't pull or hold his punches. So that was his leadership style. Then we had Hansie Cronje, who, before it even became a part of the coaching vernacular, he had these people skills or man management, where you can now have a coach who's never played himself at international level, but as long as his people skills are good, he can coach whatever country he wants to go to. He can get the best out of the players and the best out of the team. So that sort of comparison to Kepler, and then Sean Pollock, who was an incredible cricketer, an incredible cricket brain to go with that. Different styles of leadership, which you are going to get in the personalities. You can never be somebody else as a leader. But when it came to Graham Smith, I was now working for the bank that sponsored the team. I had a Bachelor of Commerce degree, and actually trained and worked as a business banker in South Africa. Fortunately for me, we started what we called Pro 20. So we launched T20 cricket in 2004. So way before it became sexy in the IPL, we thought it was really sexy in South Africa. And the bank had brought it on, We had to convince the cricket board, as you do in most countries. Pakistan, of course, I'm talking about India. India or BCCI, amazing. And we convinced the cricket board that, hey, this is quite a sexy game, man. So, the crowds will come down because domestic cricket had almost peaked out or plateaued with the viewership. And I became sponsorship manager of the brand, of the 20-over cricket, and then of the entire Standard Bank cricket sponsorship. So I got to see Graham Smith, who is now the new captain after Sean Pollock got fired in the 2003 World Cup. And I got to see his leadership style up close and personal. And Gary Kirsten, remember him? Oh, he won the World Cup for India. Nothing to do with the helicopter shot. Nothing to do. He's the only South African to have won a World Cup. Okay, it was for India. But we'll take it. We'll take one. 1/16. We'll take it. But Gary Kirsten kept telling me, because I'd say, Gary, man, the stuff I'm reading in the newspaper, just for me, it's a concern. I mean, Graham Smith is 22. I mean, let's face it. I remember 92 World Cup at being 22 years old. I mean, I knew absolutely nothing. And even though Graham Smith had now had, and we had no South African international heroes to look up to. So Graham had already had a generation of international cricketers from his own country to respect and admire and to follow. But Graham was fairly critical. He called it truthful. And the media loved him, even the South African media, because
we love honest people.
Everyone loves a little bit of a story to kind of latch onto and drive home. And he wouldn't say anything nasty, but he would talk about, so if the journalist would say at the end of the day's play, and we'd lost by 10 runs or 15 runs, the journalist would say in the press conference afterwards, so Graham, where do you think you guys messed up? Or where do you think it went wrong? And he would literally say, well, in the first 5 overs, we probably didn't score enough runs. So journalists quite happy, and Gary Kirsten and Graham, and at that stage Herschel Gibbs, because Graham batted 3. Those two were facing Brett Lee, who had 150 kilometers an hour. You're just thinking survival for the first 5 overs. And you read about your captain saying you didn't score enough runs, where, you kind of get through that initial stage. So his captaincy matured as his personality matured. He was a good cricket captain, and the results speak for himself. He also then brought in this Protea fire, so a real team ethos and a team culture, which he brought along. And because he had the good leadership skills to go with it, he didn't force it on like Kepler Wessels.
But tell me something. I know this question's been asked of you, and you're always ready with an answer, but I have to ask you this, because this is something which is hanging around in the heads of a lot of people. Joker pucho. So I'm going to ask him about this. You had multiple leaders, Kepler Wessels, Sean Pollock, you had Graham Smith, and in between, you guys, part of the leadership team, as seniors. Why is it that this choker stag sticks on you? What is wrong with South Africa cricket? What goes off in the mind that in that situation you lose? Have you not forgotten what happened in 1992 with the Douglas, the DL method, or what's wrong?
I think that the crazy thing is that I played in 4 World Cups for South Africa. So from 92 to 2003, there were 4 World Cups. And then I coached South Africa as a fielding coach in 2007 in the Caribbean, in the West Indies. So in all those tournaments, I never once felt that, man, we've thrown this game away. 1992, so before, was prior to the Duckworth-Lewis method, we had a rain rule that was really in favor of the team batting first.
Yes.
It worked in our favor against Pakistan, because when we played that day when I tripped over my laces and fell into the wicket and some guy took a great picture, which I took credit for, it was me, part of the plan, was just me.
Are you willing to concede that to him? He says he tripped on his shoelaces and that's what happened in February 1992. Are you willing to believe that?
Yeah, of course. Of course. Anyway, so...
Wish we all tripped like that at that time, you know.
So that rain rule worked in our favor against Pakistan and then worked against us in the semi-final. We literally lost 10 minutes. So we were going along with 21 needed of 13 balls. Dave Richardson, Brian McMillan, two of our most experienced players in a non-experienced team at the crease and looking like we were going to win the game comfortably, a semi-final. I mean, Pakistan did play really well in the final. The ball did swing. I don't know how it swung so much. Just beggars belief. Anyway, so no guarantee we would have won the final. But
there was no grass on the stadium. There was no grass on the entire turf.
Of course, at the MCG. So in our first outing, we probably got further than anybody expected us to get, which for us too was, if we were honest with ourselves, was a pretty good result. So barring 10 minutes of rain, we could have got to a final. 1996, there was this chap, we played against the West Indies. They then changed the rules because they introduced 2 more teams. So they then had the first round and then quarterfinals. So the first time they'd been knocked out of the World Cup. And that guy from the West Indies, that left-hand guy with the big bat lift, what's his name? He could play a little bit. Brian Lara. I mean, he scored 100 on a slow turning wicket in Pakistan of all places. That country keeps coming up. Nobody else could score a run. And he made it look so simple, as class players generally do. The rest of the West Indies team, the rest of the South African team really struggled. So he got 100. He was dropped early on in his innings by the wicketkeeper, which didn't help. And, if we had changed that, so it was never a case of we've choked in 96. We didn't even get to the semi-final. It was the first knockout. We'd won 5 out of 5. So everyone then went, oh, okay, they're back at it.
What happens? Because I remember Alan Donald, Ricky Ponting, that episode. Then Sachin Tendulkar.
Yeah, we had, then 1999, we played against England. We played in England against Australia in the semi-final. And Donald and Klusener were batting together with literally 1 run to win. We didn't lose the game. We tied the game. And the crazy thing is that, it was a low-scoring game. But I remember when we came off the field, Hansie Cronje was still the captain, so it was just before that match-fixing saga broke in South Africa. And when we came off the field, he said, because it was only about 213, so not a big score in 50 overs, but at the end of the English summer, wickets start getting dry and start to turn. And I remember Hansie saying, gee, Joe, I think we're about, we've probably given them 10 to 15 too many. Shane Warne came on. We were 50 without loss. Shane Warne came on, took 4 wickets in literally 4 overs. The ball did turn square. Hansie Cronje was given out off the toe. Daryl Cullinan, he bowled Gary Kirsten. And the game turned. Jacques Callis and myself then got runs. We got the game back into our sort of favor. Then we both got out. So, everyone talks about Donald. He was in the same crease. He dropped his bat. He should never have been batting. I mean, we really could have finished the game.
But have you been able to put a finger to it as to what's the reason?
I really wished I had, because if you can go we had access to a psychologist in the team. So it wasn't everybody has to sit down and listen to the psychologist talking about hitting the ball on fire. I mean, there was a guy who had come from a rugby background. He had never played cricket in his life before. So when you got people telling you, if it's there and you want to utilize that, then it's fine. A couple of the guys did want to, but not many guys on their own accord went to the team psychologist or psychiatrist.
Date, none of you guys have actually been able to put a finger on why you choked or why you choke. Or is it just...
I think also now, the term choke, if you think about the World Cups that have been played, and not just the World Cups, the ICC tournaments, T20 and 50 overs, we have every opportunity. We won the first Champions League or Champions Trophy in 1996 that was hosted in Bangladesh. But only 8 sides were playing. I think you played 3 matches and then we won the final. So, the first time the ICC brought in a tournament other than the World Cup, we won that and we didn't even think about it. So, so we have won an event from the ICC. And Gary Kirsten's won the World Cup. Did I mention that?
Yeah, you did.
Okay. But there's nothing that I can say, that's the problem, let's fix that.
That's the problem.
I wished it was a case of...
Because it's happened with successive teams. I'm not saying that it's just with one particular set of players, but it's with successive teams and those who did not even carry that baggage. So that's why I'm trying to understand
the key for me, though, is if you look back at World Cups, Australia dominated 3 World Cups. They won 3 consecutive World Cups, which is incredible. They had an amazing side. And now, anybody that plays in a World Cup can win it. There's 5 teams who really can. So no matter what, I think the problem, too, is that we were, for a long time, the #1 ranked team in the world on the ICC rankings, who could not, like Goafest, Colin Montgomery, who was the best player never to win a major. So you get these tags. And is it choking? I don't know. I mean, you can put a term to it. It's the easiest term to have.
Well, I'd love to continue to press him on, but we've got to ask a few more questions. I have to cover a lot of ground with Jonty Rhodes. He could do it. It's difficult for me, you see. But let me ask you this. Why did Hansie do it? Because you rate him as one of the best captains. Why did Hansie Cronje do what he did, along with Herschel Gibbs?
I think the sad thing for me is that, and it was very evident in our sort of first-class career. So before the days of international cricket, Hansie and I were at university. So we're in different states, different cities, but at the same age group. So we'd played against each other and in the same teams from age 13 and had got on really, really well. And he was the only cricketer in my generation for the first sort of 10, 15 years that I played first-class cricket then into South Africa, that read the entire newspaper, not just the back page, especially when you've done well. The first thing you do is you open the hotel door and you go get the newspaper and read all about yourself. It's a wonderful feeling. You don't touch the paper if you've failed. But Hansie was really interested in the markets. I mean, from a share point of view, the share prices. And it was pre-IPL, so the guys weren't making any money. Not much money, so not any money. But nowadays, some of the cricket teams, through the players' associations, have agreements with the cricket boards where they get a share in cricket income. So anything from advertising to gates to television rights. Whereas in those days, you got your salary and that was it. There was no negotiations. And Hansie, even before playing for South Africa, his mother was an estate agent. And in the small town that he was, there was quite a good, strong universities and very strong school systems. And he got my salary for first-class cricket my first year was $300. And Hansie got the same for his state team. It was kind of the lowest that you would get. But with his $300, he put down, with the help of his parents, but who didn't have a great deal of money, he purchased 3 homes on a bond and got the university students to pay off. So by the end of his university career, he actually owned 3 properties, which none of us were even thinking about. So he was driven by money, very sadly. And he was open about it, and not just up to the match fixing before it. I mean, he was really focused on how much money. As an athlete, he was eating at McDonald's every night in the UK, because to go out and you get a decent meal would cost you 30 quid. And that was like my laundry meal, my laundry allowance. You know, you blow it on one dinner out. So he would go and eat the cheapest meal that he could and save as much cash as possible, take it back to South Africa. So he was sadly someone driven by money. And when he first got involved with the bookmakers, the bookies asked him for information, which he was giving. The same information he was giving to the journalist at a pre-game press conference. What do you think is a good score? Have you seen the wicket? Are there any players that you're concerned about? So Hansie justified what he was doing, was that he wasn't losing the game. It wasn't match fixing, because for us, match fixing was getting bowled. Oh, here's that team again. I'm not going to talk about them. Getting beaten by Bangladesh in the 1999 World Cup with 3 run-outs. Okay, 2 of them involved Inzamam, which we know he's good for 2. Somebody else and then himself. Generally, Alu. There was a 3rd run-out, which is then a bit suspect. I mean, and 2 or 3 very easy dismissals. So we were all going, okay, so if Hansie's accused of match fixing, what is that? We're the #1 team in the world. We're not losing many games at all. So unfortunately, he justified it because he was giving the press the same information that he was giving the bookies. The bookies then said, hey, Hansie, you're actually costing us money. We need a guaranteed result. Not the end result, but spot fixing obviously was someone to underperform in their particular field. So Herschel Gibbs was the one who was supposed to score less than 20, I think, was the case, as an opening batsman.
Did you ever get suspicious that there was something going around in the dressing room, or was it very close?
No, I mean, the amazing thing was, it was during the tour of India. So, you know, you spend a lot of time as a team together in your team room. So whether it's preparing the meals, the physiotherapists are in the team rooms, television, board games, playing cards. And the thing for Hansie was that I actually had my first daughter way back in 2000. She was born during that tour. And my wife at the time, she said I must apply for paternity leave, which just wasn't something that happened ever to anybody. Cricket board said I could have 4 days off, because it was a cesarean, so we knew the date, going to be a C-section. And she said, no, you got to cancel the tour to India. I said, well, that could jeopardize my career. There was no discussion, apparently. So I stayed at home for the entire 2 months. So when Hansie was then accused, by the Indian police saying that they've got telephone conversations. I was in South Africa, I wasn't there, but my teammate said he would come into the dressing room, and he was quite a joker. I mean, even though he was serious and a great speaker, he was quite a prankster in the team. And he would say, anybody want to earn a couple of $1,000s? And they really thought he was joking. So, no one took him seriously.
Took him seriously.
Sadly, Herschel Gibbs did. So it was a case of, I wasn't there, I didn't see it. When people asked me, I said, don't be stupid. This guy is the most committed, dedicated. I mean, he used to train with an international 1,500-meter runner just to be the fittest guy in world cricket.
Do you thank your stars? Do you thank God Almighty that your wife, your ex-wife, forced you to take that paternity leave and you were not part of that team? And you didn't tour those 2 months where it all unfolded?
And don't you know, there's two sides to that story, because I am grateful.
Because I'm going to put a comma there and ask you this too, because it's the same ex-wife who told you to quit at the peak of your career. Those 2 years when you're averaging 50 and you're doing your best is when she said call time on your career.
The only reason why I'm grateful that I wasn't there, because they had an inquiry and a commission into this match fixing. The sad thing for me is that if, as a good friend of Hansie, if I had been there, and I mean, my parents are both teachers, so, not just a father who was a PT teacher and then head of department and a headmaster for 20 years, which is why I have quite a well-developed backside, because it was like a built-in cushion. Because in those days, the headmasters they had a cane, not a big latte like the cops have here, but a small, very flexy, whippy cane.
And that hurts.
And
it used to leave marks.
I mean, the amazing thing was that, the funny thing to get back to, it was my father, as a cricket player, I'm very fortunate that my father was a sports coach in many ways. And the one thing he said, Jonty, people will tell you your entire career, whether it's coaches or teachers, that practice makes perfect. Practice makes perfect. And he said, I hate to tell you, it's only half the story. It's perfect practice that makes perfect. So you got to practice. You got to practice like you're in a match situation. And the funny thing with my dad, talking about perfect practice, is that I'm one of 3 boys. So we grew up at home playing all sorts of ball sports, breaking windows, getting into trouble, tears because it was out. No, it wasn't. We started a fight, and my dad was one of those guys that if any tears, all 3 get a hiding. No discussion. Didn't want to hear any long stories like I give now. So I'm getting my opportunity for long stories. But what he did was he had this cane, which he had one at the office and one at home, exact replica, same weight, same flexiness. So he knew some of the parents would be a little bit upset that, because, depending on the infringement at the school, you could get 1, 2, 3, and expulsion was 6. And I think my dad relished the day that there was some boy bad enough in the school to do something like smoke when you're 12 to get expelled from the school. Because then you get 6 hidings, 6 cuts, and you get expelled. I think my dad didn't get enough of those kids in his school, because whenever somebody came in for a hiding, he would kind of up the punishment to 2 and sometimes 3. But with that practice makes perfect, he would then send a boy home, having given him 3 lashes with 1 stripe. Just X stripe. So the child would go back to his mom and say, look, Mr. Rhodes hit me 3 times. And the mother would say, what are you talking about? There's just 1. There's 1 stripe. So my dad would practice. He would practice at home like his life depended on it, or his school career, his teaching career depended on it.
So had you been here,
practice makes perfect.
So you're saying, look at the beauty of this guy, and that's why I admire him so much. He's not saying that I'm thankful I was not part of the crew. He's actually saying, had I been here, I would have been able to stop Hansie Cronje.
I'm not sure if I could have stopped him, but it could have been different. You never know. So sure.
You would have rung the alarm bell. Now, let's get a move on. I know there are some questions that are going to be coming from there, but I have to ask 2 or 3, and then we'll leave the floor open. Let's ask you about your love for India. You've named your daughter India Rhodes. You've just finished a 2-month vacation, and I've loved the pictures that you've posted. What's it that connects you to this country?
I mean, it's, even though I'm no longer coaching and not doing much television commentary work, there is a passion for cricket in me that is never going to be released ever. It doesn't. And that's the easy part. The first association in India is obviously that. My wife and I, we've been together now for just over 5 years, and she was a yoga teacher and very spiritual. And so for me, my connection with India, as a cricket player, you kind of arrive, you get to the hotel, the cricket ground, the airport, and that's all you see. And as a fielding coach, I mean, I could be the the sort of national newspaper, because I have been to Lucknow, to to northeast, to Bengal, to down south, to Mangalore, so all over Karnataka, Kovalong Point
Yes.
in Tamil Nadu, and even up to close to Pakistan. I snowboard in Kashmir. So, I could talk about, if there was nothing else to talk about, I could talk about Pakistan if I had to. But I've been all over India, and I've made it, I get on the infield. So Make in India for me is very important. I have a baby Make in India. I mean, I took it to heart. But that's not the reason. I mean, if you see my wife, you'll understand why I make in India, or I practice Make in India as often as possible.
Twice already.
Very attractive lady.
Twice already.
Anyway, sorry, I'm blushing here. But for me, she and I both decided for different reasons why we were going to name India, India. And for her, obviously, as a yoga teacher and somebody who's always wanted to come to India and never had. I mean, we've had a second child together, born in India as well. The last IPL, 2017, Nathan. So we have 2 kids born in Mumbai. So the reason why we called India, India, for her was a real spiritual connection with the country. I mean, we're not blinded by the fact that there are real issues in India that need to be addressed. We're a third world economy. We have massive issues in South Africa. So we're very aware of the fact that it's not all just through rose-tinted glasses. But for me, every time, and I get out as much as possible, so on a bicycle, on a motorbike, on 2 wheels as often as I can, because I have a death wish probably when you ride a bike here. Although the traffic just doesn't move, so you're actually safer on 2 wheels. At least you can get somewhere. So for me, when I walk out of the hotel in Mumbai, 9 years of coaching with Mumbai Indians, every day that I get out the hotel door and I turn right, whether it's on a bike or on my feet, something new or different is there every single day. Every single day. And I think that the problem for me as an ex-cricket player or someone who's still remembered well in India is that I have no expectation. People come to India and they have this expectation, they're often disappointed because it wasn't quite what they were expecting or thinking, or they didn't like the smell here, or didn't like the sight of that, or these kids at the window were very disturbing. So I have no expectation still of what I'm going to see today when I walk out of the door. And I think that was a key for me, was that you often hear about coaches and mentors talking about seize the day. And for me, it was a case of, well, that's pretty much trying to force the situation into what I want to happen. Whereas if you go with the outlook of, let's embrace the day. I mean, Carpe Diem, I was a big fan of Robin Williams and Dead Poets Society. Yes. It was a movie that I really loved, and he was on about Carpe Diem. But when you're seizing the day, you're trying to bend it, what is happening, and actually what needs to happen. You're trying to make it into your environment or fit your circumstances. So for me, it was a case of India, as my daughter, no matter what people's expectations are of me and you now as a child of mine, I have no expectation. Every day that you go out, you just go out and embrace that day to its fullest. So,
and you do that, and so right. Every day then becomes a surprise, because you're actually bending yourself to that. Now, I think we've got a lot of
surprises here. We've got about 10 questions.
10
Anand,
questions, so...
choose your top 3, and then
top 3.
Jonty and Anand choose the top 1.
Okay.
The best one.
He chooses, though.
Yeah, he chooses the
I saw what happened to the
first 3
minister when he
questions,
left. About 10 people hit him because they didn't choose his question. Or he didn't
Well,
choose it.
there are 3 questions that... Actually, all of these questions. Saurabh Tyagi, Tanmay Arora, Samita Chaudhary, Abhishek Sharma, Laj Salam, Surabhi Gupta, Janvi Devrukar, Akshay Kulkarni, Janvi again, and Sandeep Pillai. Your questions, I don't know if I read all of them out, but thank you for putting these questions out. I think the best question that you get to pick out of these 3 that I ask you, and that person wins something. I don't know how much, but they do get something. If not, you can come up on the stage and you'll get a selfie with Jonty Rhodes. Okay, for you, Saurabh Tyagi asks you, who has been the best Indian fielder of all time? How would you rate? Who would you rate as the best Indian fielder?
Yeah, it's interesting because for a long time, I was rated the #1 fielder in the world, but there was no #2 or #3. So it's easy. It's easy to be #1. It's easy to be #1 in a pool of 1. So when there's no other contest, whereas now what's happened, and there was a fielding revolution, and I don't think it was just what I was doing. Cricket has become a business, and every aspect, people have identified that every element of the game needs to be worked on. So when I look at Indian fielding, and for a long time, you know, Azhar in the gully was pretty sharp, good hands. Sachin had very steady hands under any ball. He was consistent. But Mohammad Kaif was the only guy that was kind of speed around the field and agility. And then you had Yuvraj.
Yeah, Yuvraj.
And the crazy thing, you had Harbhajan Singh as like the third best fielder in India. And that was a scary. I mean, I love Bhaji. Bhaji and I have come a long way. You know, from my first year with Mumbai Indians, it's been an interesting journey. And I love him because he supplies the best mangoes in India. Those Alphonse mangoes. Anybody needs mangoes, you just hook up with Bhaji. He's an incredible supplier of mangoes. And my kids love mangoes, especially India. I don't know why. Anyway, so these three guys kind of stood out. But now this new generation of fielders are incredible. You know, so you got athletes coming into the fore. My only concern is they're not playing other sports, man. This Khelo India is so important because cricket, sure, takes the lion's share of time on television, time in all media, sponsorship, awareness, spectatorship. But all the other sports, my fielding prowess was because I was a hockey player, football player, tennis player. It all combined to making me the fielder that I am. So the long journey. Suresh Raina, I don't know what he does, that guy, man. He's incredible. You know, Jadeja hits the stumps every time. He's really fast. He almost doesn't have to dive, Jadeja, because he is so quick over the ground, and he's got a deadly, deadly eye and deadly throw at the stumps. But Suresh Raina, when I watch him, I mean, I could watch him. I used to watch A.B. de Villiers as a fielding coach with the same admiration. These guys just do incredible stuff in the field. So Suresh reminds me of myself as a younger player. I know time's up. But the amazing thing is that I had this philosophy is that if you don't go, you'll never know. So too many guys stand there, let the ball go past them. Whereas I'm diving for the ball, my teammates criticize me and say, Jonty, that's a TV dive. You just dive because of TV, then you start bleeding, and your mother can say, what a wonderful guy you are. And basically, the guy said, Jonty, stop diving because you're showing off. So Suresh, I was diving for the ball because you never know. If you dive into the wicket, some guy takes a picture. If you dive for the ball, you can catch it in the end of your fingers. Some photographer takes a great picture. Suresh Raina, he's not worried about the camera, but he's not worried about, is he going to catch it or isn't he? He goes for the ball. If he catches it or stops it, amazing. If he misses it, that's all cool. Too many guys stand there, think afterwards, I wonder if I could have stopped that. Suresh Raina, for me, best in India.
Why don't you just pick up the phone and tell him to lose some weight? Because Kohli is not having him in the team because he's overweight? Is that true?
What he's lost so much weight. I mean, I follow him on Twitter, and all his videos are team training. So it's good to see him back in good shape.
Okay, I've got two questions, and I know I'll wind up. Are you guys okay if I take another 5 minutes to take these two?
Yeah, it's all good, yeah.
All right, okay. I thought she's standing there to tell me, get out.
No, I'm just the class monitor, that's all.
All right, class monitor, all right. We ignore the class monitor, even though you're in my line of sight for the moment. Okay, the question is, if you had to give advice to Virat Kohli on his leadership skills, what would it be? This is Sandeep Pillai who's asked this question. Yeah.
I think the key there, obviously, is none of us know what he is going through as the captain of India. There are not many people who've done that successfully. Dhoni was the first guy who I think had a successful run. And the crazy thing is he was considered to be a lucky captain, Dhoni. I mean, it was real skill. And if you look at him, he's always got a plan. Yeah. You know, so calm under pressure. And every time there was every time a batsman came to the crease, there was a bowling change, a fielding, before the ball got hit. Too many captains, the ball goes there, they put a fielder. Ball goes there, put a fielder. Dhoni always had a plan. Kohli, for me, he's very pumped up, very aggressive. He's got to be true to himself, that's one. And if that means he's that fiery character, that's okay. Because you do have to, because in the heat of the battle, when you're under pressure, your true inner self is always going to shine or show itself. So if you're trying to be somebody else, it'll be fine for a while until you really put to the test. So that my only concern with that fire and brimstone is that when your team is doing well, you can pump fists and you can tell the guy to go and have a nice cold shower in the nicest possible way. But when the team isn't doing well, where is that pent-up sort of fury and passion? Where is that directed? So that's my only concern. So he needs to have an outlet to kind of release that. He wears his heart on his sleeve.
Yes, he does.
He has to be consistent, though. So if that works for him, it has to work in the good and the bad. As long as all that passion and fire is directed at himself, if the team isn't doing very well.
Right. Now, two good questions, but I'm going to pick the... Abhishek, I'm going to skip your question, and I'm going to take this. Ask more. Okay. All right. Are you guys enjoying this session? Because the front row is. All right, the backbenchers. Jonty Rhodes, put your hands together for him, please. He's just fantastic, isn't he? He can go on and on. All right. So, Abhishek, I'm going to slip your question in too. But after this, do you miss the moment? This is Akshay Kulkarni who's asked this question. Do you miss the moment when the ball is in the air while you wait for it to fall in your hands? Is there a substitute to that feeling outside cricket in real life?
Well, no, lights. Very important lights, thank you. Okay, yeah. Whew. Not outside cricket, so outside playing cricket. Now, when you're a fielding coach, and India has just won the World Cup in 2011. Gary Kirsten has won the World Cup for India in 2011. And the first game that the Mumbai Indians play in the IPL, which, I mean, the guys have gone around the country collecting cars and houses and property and states, I think. So they come back the day before the IPL starts, day one. I mean, I've never met half the guys in my team. Munaf Patel. He comes and joins Mumbai Indians. So you talk about the satisfaction when the ball goes up in the air and you either stand under it and you catch it, or you take a dive and catch it, a dive and you catch it. The most satisfying moment when the ball goes up in the sky, away from me actually being under it, is when Munaf Patel catches it. So. And the crazy thing, and I hate to tell you.
And now you have Jasprit Bumrah, don't you?
No, man.
You got Jasprit Bumrah then, after Munaf Patel.
He was a guy that, it was incredible, because the first time, it's a long story, she's gone, we're fine.
Yeah.
It's not a long story. You know, I mean, the Indian fielders, other than K from the three guys that I mentioned, run around the boundary, stop the ball with a foot. So I said to Munaf, the guys, I mean, the Ambanis have paid quite a bit of money to have you in the team. I have one rule, only one rule, just ek rule, just one, is that if you're not going to dive for the ball, don't put a foot there. Because if you stand on it, and let's face it, Munaf's 6'3", he's not the most agile and athletic guy. If he puts a foot on the ball, trying to stop it, he's going to break an ankle. So I said, that's your IPL, the first game, the ball went round, and I just met him the day of the game, literally. And I said to Munaf, you know, there's only one rule. If you're not going to dive, don't put a foot, just leave it. But just remember, when you're bowling the next over, and some fool doesn't dive on the boundary, and you get all angry, don't look at me, the fielding coach, look at yourself. So, the amazing thing. Because my philosophy as a fielding coach was just save me one run. Everything's ek run, because that's all I can speak in Hindi. It's like a full total ek, one run. Because most of the games in T20 come down to the last over, and usually the last ball. So if each guy has saved me 11, including the wicketkeeper, has saved me one run. So if I've got 11 runs to play with, that's often the margin. So the next game, Munaf, after putting his foot down, we played in Rajasthan against the Royals when they were still playing. And Munaf dived for a ball. And when that body hits the ground, it takes a long time to get up. But he dived. So it should have been one, but they ran 3. But the ball didn't go over the boundary. The ball didn't go over the boundary. So Munaf eventually gets himself off the ground, he gets the ball and he throws it in, and he stands there like this and going, Coach! Ek run, save. They ran 3. It didn't go over the boundary. It should have been 1, but he saved his 1 run. He was so proud. And that IPL, every time the ball went up in the sky, I went, Munaf is underneath it. And he caught the most catches of any Mumbai Indians player that whole tournament. It was such a relief. Very grateful for Munaf.
All right.
Sorry, long stories.
No, they're enjoying it. They're enjoying it. Okay. This is the last question. Mr. Rhodes, the world is becoming a dangerous place day by day. Do you think cricket can make a difference in establishing the peace? Can cricket become a vehicle for peace? We played a friendship series in 2004, and we are doing it even now. Once again, Pakistan. But the larger question.
Well, I think we've got to look beyond India-Pakistan issues, because you really can't separate politics from sport. In South Africa, we have very different issues, but similar. It's politics. And you can't escape it. The ideal scenario, no politics in sports, because you should just have the best people playing against each other when they need to play against each other. And for me, the politics and can sport make a difference in various parts of the world? I just think of the Afghanistan team, where they've come from. You know, you hear some of those guys, because they hardly speak any English, so communication is a bit of an issue, but I've coached a few of the associate member teams, for a tournament to help them out with Kenya, with Namibia. So in Africa, I've been involved with some of the teams there. And I can see how the Afghanistan team has grown in stature. I mean, it's hard to believe they can grow in stature when they're this short at the crease, when they're batting and just throwing the bats and everything. But grown in stature just emotionally because of where they've come from and what they have achieved as players. And what it's doing in the region
some of those guys are phenomenal.
Incredible. So I think from that point of view, we sometimes we forget the bigger picture. We look at the immediate issues and the issues that are pertinent to us, which, obviously Pakistan and India is a very big part. Quota systems in South Africa is a big topic in sports in South Africa. And we always say you need to separate the politics. But if you think of what, how sport can make a difference in those sort of places like Afghanistan, Nepal, after, what Kathmandu experienced 4 or 5 years ago. There are many places around the world that cricket is one way, and then many other sports are doing the same thing, that they can make a difference in those communities, in those countries. So, I think too often we forget the bigger picture. We just kind of focus on what's affecting us.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jonty Rhodes. I've got plenty more questions to ask, but I think I'll be unfair to the rest, so I'm going to wind it up here. Please, a big round of applause for this man. Fantastic. Superb.
Thank you.
Now, I think you've got to pick. Does he have to pick the best question?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So.
What was your favorite question, Jonty?
Okay, so firstly, I just Jaideep, Gandhi, and the rest
there
of the rest of the crew the team that brought me here. Jaideep, thank you. Good to see you this morning. Thank you. Sorry I wasn't very polite. He was taking my conversation and my focus. But just for having me here at Goafest, I've always politicians and ex-cricket players never give them the microphone because they never give it back. So
Okay, I'll take it back.
You got to take us off.
They're taking all the commentating jobs. But okay, which is the best question?
Thank you for having me. And I think the last one for me is, that's what I'm trying to be. I'm trying to be relevant. So the reason why I've retired from cricket, from coaching, from commentary, is that I still, not just from a sporting point of view, but I want to get into wellness, corporate wellness, especially in India. So I want to be relevant. When I'm a fielding coach, I'm relevant, for 11 guys on the field. I still think all of us can make that one run worth of a difference in the communities that we find ourselves. So the last question for me about sport.
Abhishek Sharma, come on up.
Welcome, Abhishek. Congratulations. Thank you for asking the question.
You got your phone with you? You got your phone with you? You don't have your phone with you. Too bad, mate. I told you, you could have gotten that selfie.
No, you know what? Abhishek has a strategy. What he's going to do is ask you to take the picture, then take your number, or ask Jonty to take the picture, or take his number after the show.
Great, there you go. You got your phone.
Oh, well, there you go. Congratulations. Do you want to put your hands
together,
this
from him, and you get your selfie, Abhishek.
For Anand, Jonty, and Abhishek.
Yeah, go ahead. Kanun ke haath nambe ghuma to lo, bhai. There you go.
Fantastic.
Fantastic. Jonty, if you
Well
could
done.
just
Congratulations.
do the honors. This is for you.
Bravo.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jonty Rhodes once again. Please give him a rousing applause. He's been fantastic, hasn't he? Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Abhishek.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to request Jonty to kindly remain on stage. Mr. Rhodes, please, may I request you to remain on stage? I have the absolute privilege of inviting on stage Mr. Nakul Chopra to present a token of appreciation to our wonderful grand finale leader, Mr. Jonty Rhodes. Thank you so very much. Anand, you've been wonderful. Thank you so much. It's amazing how you managed to keep everyone smiling and engaged through every bit of your sessions. Thank you very much.